In this podcast, I want to do a quick review of the order of operations. Everybody typically has seen the acronym Pemdas for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And a lot of people memorize that, and they say, okay, this is the order I have to go in. This is what I have to do when I am simplifying an expression that has a whole bunch of things in it. This has been at least bigger in the social media network, where people have been posting Facebook and things like that about problems such as the one down here below, and it's sparked controversy because they say, well, this is what I memorized and this is what I know how to do. This is one answer, and typically these problems are created knowing that most people are going to get an answer of one answer or another answer, one of two, and then they'll argue about it. So what I'm going to do is, using no assumptions at all, is use the order of operations to simplify this. What I don't like about Pemdas is that when you read that parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, a lot of people assume that you always do multiplication before division. When you have an acronym like that, M is before D, and obviously it has to be that way. When you're writing out a word, one letter has to be in front of the other. So whoever decided to make this, chose multiplication to go before division, and when students memorize that, they assume that multiplication is always before division because that's what Pemdas says. If I could rewrite it, I would rewrite it as parentheses, exponents, and I would have multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction on the same line. Take the place of one letter, because one of those should not come before the other. Multiplication does not always come before division. Addition does not always come before subtraction. It depends which one comes first from left to right. So, from multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, you want to simplify these from left to right, just like you were reading a sentence. A lot of people will claim, well, what about implied multiplication? And that's what we see down here in this example. We have 6 divided by 2 times, in parentheses, 1 plus 2. Using the order of operations, we have to simplify 1 plus 2 first. That's what's in the parentheses. So without changing anything else, all I'm going to do is change what's in the parentheses. 6 divided by 2. And inside the parentheses, I'm going to have 1 plus 2, which is 3. This is where everybody usually agrees with that. This is where the controversy comes in. Using just the original Pemdas, if you assume multiplication is always first, then you would multiply 2 times 3. But that is wrong. Okay? There is a thing called implied multiplication, where it's implied, you are supposed to assume that you should multiply 2 times this quantity here. Right? I never want you to assume anything. In math, we shouldn't assume that. If you assume that, then you should write that down and say, I assumed this. Okay? Never just do something without saying why. Now, if you just use the order of operations, you don't have to say, I use the order of operations, because that's what I'm expecting you to do. So, in this example, multiplication and division are equal. And what we do is go from left to right. So here we have a division problem, here we have a multiplication problem. We do this division problem first. 6 divided by 2, that becomes 3. We have 3 and then times 3. Now we can multiply, we get 9. The answer to this is 9. I understand that multiplication in the Pemdas is the letter M is before the letter D, but that's one reason why I don't like it, is because they are equal. You have to go from left to right. Those who claim there is an implied multiplication between these two, you're going to have to tell me why that's the case. You're going to have to tell me why that should take precedence over the order of operations. And other people like to claim that you should distribute the 2 to the 1 and the 2 to the 2. Well, what you would be doing there is multiplication out of turn. When you distribute that 2 to both those terms, you're multiplying. That is not the first thing. Division is from left to right. Division is first before you have to distribute that. So that's why distributing is incorrect. This is an incredibly easy example that a lot of people fight over. Let's get to a more complicated example with roots and exponents and such. Here's a more complicated example where we can get into using the order of operations. We have a lot of different things going on here. We have addition, subtraction, we have things raised to exponents, we have roots when we have the square root of 16, we have division, multiplication, we have lots of things going on here. So what I like to suggest is to start on the most inner things that are grouped together with parentheses. So let's go down to things that are being grouped together. Well, that's starting right here. This 3 plus 2, this is grouped together. And we have to add these together inside the parentheses before we use our exponents. And roots, as I'll get into, roots are also considered exponents. So I wrote my PE and then MDAS. I don't want to say Pemdas because then M comes before D. But this is the order of operations. M and D and A and S, they are on the same line because they are equals. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just simplify this part here. So that becomes 5 squared, and everything else stays the same. Now as you practice these, you'll notice that you can do a few things in one step. Right? There are a couple things you can simplify altogether. But let's just do one step by step and figure out what's going on here. Now, we want to take care of all the parentheses are taken care of. Let's take care of the exponents. Well, that's this part here. And roots are also considered exponents. So I'm going to simplify both of those. 5 squared is 25. Minus 16 is, or minus the square root of 16, which is 4, plus 8. All over, and I'm not going to do anything down here, even though we could. Okay, we could do that. I'm just going to leave that alone for now. That's strictly multiplication and division. Some people would say, well, aren't they grouped together because they're on a separate side? And the answer is yes, but let's just do multiplication and division when it comes to that. Up top, all we have is addition and subtraction left, so down here we're going to just simplify down here first. We have division, we have multiplication. Multiplication does not come first. That's the most common mistake, is that you say, okay, multiplication always before division. Let's multiply 2 times 5. That is wrong. If somebody wanted to say, do that multiplication first, then you would put parentheses around 2 times 5. Never assume it's implied multiplication. If somebody wanted you to tell you to multiply those, they would put parentheses around them. So, let's simplify the denominator. Up top, we're going to keep it the same. Down below, we're going to do the division first. So we're going to have 2 divided by 2. We're going to do the division first, which is just 1. So we get 1 times 5. Up top, let's keep it the same. Down below, we'll have 1 times 5, which is 5. Now up top, let's subtract first, right? Addition and subtraction are equals. We go from left to right. So we're going to have 25 minus 4, which is 21, plus 8 all over 5. Last thing to do is to add 29 all over 5. 29 fifths is our simplified number. So real quick, we see here that the order of operations gives us a guidelines of what we need to do in order to simplify a problem that contains multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, and a whole bunch of other things. If you remember one thing from this podcast, remember that multiplication doesn't always come before division. It depends which is first, from left to right. So here, in this example, we had division first, so we did that. If somebody told you, or you were simplifying something, and you want to do multiplication first, well, that will occur if multiplication's to the left of a division problem, or if this 2 times 5 was in parentheses. Then that is considered a grouping, where you would simplify it using the parentheses.